Woman from the Country, Darcy NILAND. This book is for my wife, Ruth Park. Chapter 1. A woman went to live at Moonlight when Moonlight was nothing no more than a tumbling building, a pair of wheel tracks, and a shape in the grass where a house used to be. She put up a hut on the bank of the creek and waited for time to go by, but one day she left with another, who became her mate, and the drifters use that old hut now. Her name was Barbie Casabon, and she was brought up in a man's world. She was dug out of this country, and she'd be dug into it. Some are like that. They belong nowhere else but in the land that bred them. Her father reared her. He scrubbed her in bush creeks, and fed her from a tin plate. He said, "You'll come with me everywhere, all over Australia. Where I am, you will be always." She sat around campfires with him. She curled against his warm body under the sky. She never wore dresses. She wore boys' clothes, and for a long time she looked like a boy. She listened to the stories he told her, and she asked him questions. He said the world went around like a wheel, but he never knew why. He said the sun was so profitable that men would sell it and tax those who took it if only they could work out a way. But sunlight came on the cuff, he said, and just as well, or they would have owed a bill like a roller towel, since the sun was more in their lives than anything else. He took her with him to shearing sheds, vineyards, timber camps, talc mines, cane fields, banana plantations, wherever work was, and she grew up that way and became his companion and the woman that did for him. Barbie Casabon's whole life changed with the death of her father. He died one night coming home from the beer party. Danny Fisher turned on to celebrate his going into hospital. That was the way old Danny put it, and it was like him, a bit of a wag, but sometimes not quite right in the head, people thought. He fell down a shaft in the darkness on Black Boy Hill, Barbie's father, and they brought him up in the morning with a broken neck. They laid him on the hard yellow earth. His hair was bright and gray as steel. There was nothing to him. He was like a whip, but like a whip tough. A man standing there said, "Christ, he didn't think you could kill a man like that if you jumped on him 10 times and put him through a mangle." There was no thought in Barbie's mind but the way he had left her the night before, a laugh in his throat as he went out the door, and a few words tossed over his shoulder. "Don't go waiting up, Barb." He left nothing. He had nothing, only a little parcel of opal. Barbie couldn't understand it. There was no belief for such a happening. She kept telling herself, he knew Black Boy Hill so well. The lie of all that barren land he knew. The shelves, the pits, the refuse dumps of copy clay, every mound and every rise and fall. He didn't need the light of sun or moon or stars. He didn't need eyes even. It was a map in his brain. How is it that way, she thought. Doing the simplest things, boiling a billy, washing a blanket, sweeping a room, doing them every day and doing them 1,000 times. Would you think you could do them wrong? beyond the stony watercourse and the trickle of Opal Creek, a mile from the settlement of huts and dugouts. They put him away. His grave made 3 on the slope, dry as an old skin. The others held the bones of a child and an old man. All of it was up and down country, brooded over by space and silence, a waste of sand and stone, baked to baldness, living on the very lip of the sun. It was good for burying, and that was all, Barbie thought. Burying Opal, burying men. After the funeral, she shut the door of her hut and sat alone in thought. I'm a real Jimmy Woodser now, on my own, the first bird on the family tree and the last. He stays, but I move. He's pitched camp for all time, but I go on. This is where I turn into another road, a strange road made for one pair of footfalls. This is where I go over a hill into a part I don't know. This is the time of the empty chair, talking to yourself and a bite on your own. I've seen it come for others. I never thought of it coming for me. A woman's voice sounded at the door. You all right, Barbie? Yes. Have a damn good cry, love. Let it come out. It helps. Oh God, the pain, the pain. It's as if I'm just feeling it. It's like a limb cut off, not clean through, torn out of me and away from me. You in there, Barbie? It was a child's voice. Barbie didn't answer. I can see you through the crack. You sick? No, go away, Puddin'. What are you holding your head like that for? Please, Puddin', run away, come back after. What's a zebra, Barbie? She didn't answer. It's an animal, I know that. It's a horse with stripes. But, Puddin', you must go away. See if your mummy wants you. She don't, Puddin' said. Is it a white horse with black stripes, or a black horse with white stripes? That's what I want to know. He waited patiently for the answer. When he realized it wasn't coming, he gave her an option. What do they eat then? Boys? Boys, heck. Little fat boys who don't run away when they're told. I'm goin', Puddin' said. The lamp burned in Barbie's house all night. She herself was like stone, but she came out of a doze in the morning, and saw the light and heard the stillness. She felt the solitariness, the pitiless emptiness of time, the meaningless reality of everyday things. She saw on the nail behind the door his dirty hat, stiff and stained with the clay of the shafts and tunnels. She cried. She didn't think she would stop. 2 days later, silent and composed, she made a fire outside and burned all her father's clothes. Puddin' came up, eating a slice of bread and jam. He was 4, built like a Buddha, dressed in shirt and overalls and a sailor's hat. Pigs eat hats, Barbie. Do they? Dad said, pigs'll eat anything. Why don't you keep that hat for a pig? His face was gravity itself. He watched the sparks flying. With serious interest, he pushed the last of the bread into his already full mouth and wiped his hands on his hat. That bread and jam was good, he said. Barbie broke up an old suitcase and fed it to the flames. The child sat down and crossed his legs. Wish I had some more. Barbie thought, I'll have a real good think, and I'll work all this out. If I'm going to stay on here, it won't be like this, and if I'm going, I want to know when. Everybody should eat bread and jam. It's good. But I don't know where to start thinking. I wish I knew what to do. If I only knew what to do, I'd feel better. It hurts like anything." She went back into the house. Puddin' sat in the dirt, sprinkling dust on the ashes. From the doorway, Barbie called him. "You going to eat with me, I s'pose?" He sauntered over. "What have you got?" "Bread and jam. Anything else?" "What would you like?" she said. "I don't know. Anything. A piece of meat with a handle. You got that?" "I think I can fix you up," she told him. She took 2 chops out of the meat safe and put them in the pan. He set the table. They ate in silence, except for Puddin's chomping. She had to smile at the way he relished his food, but she felt pity too. Poor little kid, she thought, going for your life on a chop, as innocent as you could be. It could have been your dad or mum. How much worse it would have been for you. I hope it never happens to you for a long, long time. When he was gone, she wept again. She was 22, with a face as brown as a crust of bread, and hair the color of poured beer. Her eyes were golden hazel, the iris ringed with a band of gray-green. Her features were completely symmetrical. She was slim, small-boned, well-covered, shapely. She wore trousers and a shirt and went barefooted about the house. She put in another 2 weeks working the shaft on German Gully before she made up her mind to go. There were good reasons. And Damuka, where a man could sit on his doorstep sunbaking at 5:30 in the afternoon, was a good place to be away from in any summer. To make this one worse, there was a great drought on the land. Worse, some said, than the drought of '65, when they put up a boiling down works at Port Augusta that stands in ruins to this day. But some said it wouldn't be as bad as that, though men were being beaten that were iron men. Another reason her claim was petering out. She could tunnel in farther, she thought, and perhaps pick up more opal, but she wasn't interested. The final reason, and the one that contained the others, was that she wanted to get away from this haunted place, with the ghost of her father everywhere. She missed his companionship. She felt a loneliness she had never known before. "I've lost myself somewhere," she thought, when he heard Danny Fisher sent for her. He was a cutter and polisher on the field. His hut, part workshop, was different from the others. It was still cut out of the hillside, a dugout, but he had a padlocked door on it. From the outside, the oblong hole was black as coal. Near the door he had a cask full of water, replenished from the well and lidded with a blue circle of sky. He used it as a liquid mirror when shaving or combing his hair, dipping in the comb and raking it through the sandy brush that fringed his skull. The flies drank from it, and so did he, simply by forming a scoop with his hands and lifting it to his lips, then drying his paws on the back side of his trousers. He reckoned that cask was his wishing well too. He used to peer into it, see his reflection, and say, "You and me are mates. I hope nothing comes between us." Coming in out of the glare, Barbie couldn't see him for a minute. "Danny, where are you?" "Here. What are you doing?" "Flat on the old back." "You sound great." "Ah, I feel like kicking somebody in the guts. That's how I feel." He had 2 beds cut out of the dirt wall, shelves. He was lying on one, with a cane grass mattress underneath. He looked drunk and dirty, and he was both. "You've been hitting that stuff solid for a fortnight now," Barbie said. "It'll kill you." "I ain't drunk," Danny said. "I'm sick, snow sick as a bloody dog. It was Snow first off this time. She always found it amusing to see how many names he did have for her, or anyone else. He could use a dozen in a conversation, and none of them might fit the person addressed. Come here a bit closer, darky. She moved the kerosene case nearer and sat beside the bed. Always his forehead and his bald scalp were corrugated like a pup's stomach, and he scratched his head as a gesture. He spoke with one eye open and one shut. Both eyes were never open at the same time, and both were never shut except in sleep. He was bearded with a piebald stubble. God, Freckles, it was me, you know, that got your old bloke stung and made him so pickled that he fell down. Barbie stood up. Listen, Danny, I don't want to hear it. I told you last time I said it wasn't your fault. It was nobody's fault. You don't have to harp on it all the time. It's done now. It's finished. One eye glared open. Keep your shirt on, Blue. God fret my fat. I don't mean no offense. He motioned her to sit down. All right, I won't say no more. I'm sorry, I beg yours. Don't be down on a poor old sick man. He lay back. Barbie put her hand over his. It was damp. Why don't you have a sleep? Sleep, he mumbled. It's coming, Shorty, it's coming. I'll have more sleep than I'll ever need. I got 1,000,000,000,000 years to sleep. Years you can't tote up. Give you a pain in the neck to count 'em. Ain't it funny? People. All this business coming, going, gone, all the time, over and over again, like a wheel that never stops. Like me to swing the billy and get you a drink of tea. It won't take a minute for the water to boil. No, gimme a smoke. She passed him his tobacco from the deal board table. The door opening framed burning daylight, a glare like white-hot glass. The sky was like blue metal, sandpapered smooth. Out there was the tingling air that smacked hot against the flesh. Here inside it was dim but stuffy, the air beating around the ears like a pulse. What's a man got to get sick and old for, eh? Danny leaned on his elbow, licking the cigarette paper. He might have been talking to himself. I was a little boy once, you know, Curly. I had a dad and mum. I got hurt, I cried, they fixed me up. They give me plenty to eat, good bed, but I never treated them right. I must have been a bastard of a kid. I used to jump the trains backwards and forwards from Munta to Wallaroo. We lived in Munta. You know why? Just to see the stormy sky and the glare on the clouds from the fires of the smelting furnaces, all red and wild, and the sea going on something woeful. A place for old Nick himself. A thrill of a place, but one time I fell off the train and buggered my insides up. I was in hospital. Fancy me to give 'em all that worry and anxiety, and them so good to me. And they never said anything to me, you know. They were glad I was alive. But it's come against me. Lofty, I got my punishment. Always so long-winded, always the same, Barbie thought. Never mind, she said, something'll break soon. Yes, I know, he said. Me, and it's my own bloody fault, too. You know what made me ill on top of that accident? What? Eating them damned cakes sprayed with fly killer. Barbie had to laugh. You can laugh, I'm the goat, spraying the blasted cakes and bread on the table every meal. It comes that kid one day, that little bloke of Wall Mooney's puddin', and he has a feed, he gets sick. I never woke up. I used to wonder why I felt a bit poorly after eating them cakes. It was Miss Mooney told me. I was dumbfounded. How the hell's a man to keep flies off cakes if he don't spray them? He relit his dead cigarette. Breaking out on your own, eh? That's true. Thought I'd go to Adelaide and smell the town for a while. That's what I heard. What do you do there? Loaf. Danny patted her hand. I want you to do something for me, Butch. Listen, I haven't got much longer. Oh, don't talk silly. It's not silly. You saw me come back from the port 3 or 4 weeks ago. You know I've been seeing a quack in there for the last 3 months. He can't find out what's up. With me. He told me he wants to go into hospital. He wants me to go into hospital for observation. He might have to cut me open. I could be weeks in there, he said. I didn't know it was as bad as that, Barbie said. Bunny, the writing's on the wall. Tomorrow I go in there and I mightn't come back. I'm not kicking. I've been living too long anyway. But I've got a few things, and seeing you're leaving, I'd like you to take them for me and give them to my sister in Adelaide. She told him she would do that. He plucked some notes from a little clasp purse. Here's a few quid. I don't want to be paid, Barbie said, rising. I know that. It's just expenses. Take it, and if you've got anything over, buy yourself some scent or something. On me. He closed her hand on the money. She was reluctant. Take it, woman. Don't argue the bloody point. I'll be hurt if you don't. I don't know when I'll be leaving for sure, Barbie said, but it'll be soon. Good-o, Stiffy. I'll get the stuff parceled up, ready, and drop it in on you this afternoon. You won't let me down, will you? These are treasures. I never let people down, Barbie said. She went along to the store. It, too, was a dugout, a cave hewn out of the hill, but with an artificial roof made of pine logs, covered with cane grass, bags, and dirt. Rain had set the mud hard. The doorway was about the height of an average man and 4 feet wide. A yard beyond the threshold was a little counter. Goods hung from the rafters and were displayed in shelves made of built-up boxes. A rough plank over the doorway carried the inscription, Clary Dick's Corner. There was no corner. Barbie saw a newcomer, a tall, lean man sitting on an oil drum near the store truck. He was hunched, with his head down as though dozing. He wore a cowboy hat. Clary Dick was stacking tins on the shelves. He was a long, spare man with spaniel eyes and a bit of a polish that never came to anything. He wore a dirty cricketing cap and looked like a plank split up the center. Mickey Kerrigan, his best friend, reckoned the first thing Clary Dick said when he was born was, "Look, Mum, no bum." He was so flat in that region. When the miners came in to settle their bills, he would take their account books and rip off the last 2 or 3 dockets, screwing them up and saying, "What's a few dollars here and there?" He served Barbie. "Who's he?" she said, nodding outside. "Ah, some other damned feller with the backside out of his trousers." Behind the first room there was another, an extension of the dugout, lit permanently in the daytime by a hurricane lantern. In there, Clary Dick's wife was making noises with tins. She kept calling to him to come and give her a hand. He kept telling her he would be with her in a minute. Hasn't got a cracker, Clary Dick said. No gear, nothing. He's sick with the grog, too. Looks like he's been on a bender in town and done all his dough. I don't know whether he'll be much good, but I'll give him a hand. What about that little hut at the back of my place? Dad's. He can bunk in there if he likes. Clary, are you coming or not? That'd be a help, Barbie, though a few people are leaving till the heat's off. They might let him get into one of their shacks. Clary. All right, don't lay an egg. I'm coming as fast as I can. I'll talk to him, Barbie said and went out. The man was still in the same attitude. She just told him to come with her. He said that would be easy. He was lean in the way of a cougar, a man who could carry more weight than he had. He had a narrow face, with color in it like beaten metal copper. His eyes were small, round, glossy. He carried a coat over his arm. His trousers, gabardine, were twisted, stained, and dusty. He wore a pale blue shirt with arrowed pockets. It was dirty. Wearily he trudged after Barbie. She showed him the little canvas-walled shelter, roofed with corrugated iron. It was only a sleep out. He saw the stretcher. That's for me, he said. He sat down and rolled onto it, trying to thrust off his elastic-sided boots. Barbie pulled them off. She went out and shut the door. In her own hut, which was the main dwelling, she wondered about him and his coming at this time. He seems nice, she thought. She went to see him after dark with a meal of stewed meat. She had to stir him. He screwed up his eyes in the lantern light. He looked at her and smiled. Good white teeth, well kept. God, he said, angels in a place like this. He ate ravenously. She took the plate to go, but he asked her to stay. He pulled a crumpled cigarette from the top pocket of his coat. He wanted her to sit down and talk to him and tell him what went on in this dump, and whether it was as easy as they said. Luck helps most, she told him. He gazed at her hard with a smile. I've made a good start then. I'm Barbie Casabon, she told him. Mine's Billy Lomas, so I'll call you Barbie, and you'll call me Billy, eh? He questioned her, and he liked the answers. He told her he was an odd jobman, but he did a lot of horse breaking. He said booze was his failing. He'd knock out a good check, hit the town, and see it blow like leaves in the wind. But he said he'd learned his lesson this time. He'd gone through 150 pounds in a week in Port Augusta. He said it with regret, but with a certain pride just the same, Barbie thought. A mob, you know, he explained. They hang on. See you do your last penny, then drop you like a cold spud. Never again, no fear. He gave Barbie another unsubtle, meaning look. I need a woman to keep a hold on me. I could be a good spender, the right way with a woman I liked. Barbie got up. I'll see you in the morning, she said. He caught her at the door, just gently touching her arm. He could feel her slight withdrawal. She met his eyes frankly. His hair was dark, parted on the side. He smiled confidently. "You're pretty nice," he said. She took him over the field the next day, explaining and showing him the ropes. He didn't have to sink a shaft. She said he could go down one of the old abandoned mines and take it over, but she offered to lend him her tools if he wanted to sink a shaft. He shook his head. "Why make it hard when it can be easy?" "Why don't we work together?" he said. He put an arm around her. Barbie walked up to the windlass. She was supposed to be going away. She remembered, but she said, "Why not if you want it that way?" "I want it that way, all right," he said. Barbie saw the two meanings. For a week they worked the claim together. Clary Dick was grub-staking Billy Lomas, and he cooked his own meals and ate alone for the first 4 days. Barbie gave him no encouragement to visit her after tea. Then he began to have the evening meal with her, help her with the dishes, and go off to his hut. He did this again on Sunday night, but came back. He felt he was wasting too much time. What about a game of cards? He had the pack in his hand. Barbie was pleased. She liked him. He was nice to look at, and she liked his companionship. They played 4 matches. Then Billy Lomas suggested they play for kisses. She looked up sharply and eyed him levelly. The grin was fixed on his face. She saw behind it the full implication of his suggestion. "I don't want any damn kisses," she told him hotly, angry with her sudden knowledge, because it disappointed her in him. Men were men, and she understood them, she thought, but this man was only thinking of one thing. "Why not?" he laughed. "You ever been kissed?" "Plenty," she said. "We'll stay with matches." Matches never got anybody into trouble, at least not at card stakes. He laughed again, with an undercurrent of excitement in the sound. "I'll bet it'd be like tangling with barbed wire to tangle with you." He had his tea and stayed on till late every night, all through the next week. Late on Saturday afternoon he went to push the door open, but it wouldn't budge. She had a wedge under it from the inside. "Hey, Barb." "It's me, Billy." "Get," Barbie said. "I'm having a bath." "That's all right. I don't mind. Don't you come in." "Why not?" he chuckled pleasurably. "Anyone'd think I hadn't seen a woman." "Anyone can think what they like. You're not seeing this one." "Killjoy, I'll come back." 15 minutes, she said. She was sitting squeezed up in a round tub, knees under her chin. There was about 3 inches of water in the tub. She felt guilty even using that much, but she had to feel clean, drought or no drought. She thought, "I was going away. What am I doing still here? What am I playing around with this feller for? Danny Fisher will be thinking his sister has had those things long ago." Though she didn't quite realize it, it was her loneliness that attracted her to Billy Lomas, her need for companionship, for someone to feel concern for her, the things she had been used to receiving all her life. He filled a gap. When he came back and played cards and they had had supper and it was time for him to go, he was resolved to get his way. He said he wasn't going. What was the use, he said, when he couldn't sleep for thinking of her? "Barbie, this has gone on long enough. Why hedge all the time when you know how you feel about me? It's driving me crazy." Before she had time to say anything, he grasped her and kissed her. She willingly submitted without reciprocating, but when he threw her on the bed and fell on her, her legs jerked back quickly like a cat in defense, and her feet thrust into his stomach, and as he stumbled, she was off the bed and standing. He grunted, then he looked up, hard-eyed. "You don't want to come at that," he said. "And you don't want to try anything either," she told him. Her glance fought his, the one on fire, the other a cold reflected light. He shrugged. "Okay, shake. No more funny business. See, you're tough. What do you take me for? I know. Well, don't, because you're mistaken." He was looking to solve his feeling of humiliation. "Don't you give favors. When the man comes along who takes my fancy, he'll get my favors." "Are you telling me to get out?" "No, I'm telling you to behave yourself." "You don't understand," he said, wounded. "If you were a man, you would." "You ought to try being a woman some time," she retorted. "Then maybe you'd understand too." He looked hurt and dejected, the only cunning attitude left to him. He said with an air of sulky, tormented repentance, "Okay, Barbie, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. Good night." She felt annoyed with herself for having been so hostile, and angry and disappointed with her discovery of the shallow depths in him. Wanting her, trying to take her against her will, was insult enough, though to that type of man it was natural, and she understood that. But to make the attempt without showing any real care or feeling for her was worse, yet she was not entirely convinced that he did not have some regard for her. She wanted him to have it. Lomas tried again. He had one trump card. He let a few days go by, not referring to the incident again, and treating her in a brotherly way. Barbie was confused. She felt she could have been very wrong about him. She could not see that her invulnerability tantalized him. He was experienced, seasoned. Seducing her was a challenge to him now. What he had thought would be an easy conquest had turned into a creature of fang and claw. "What the hell have I done to you to make you turn on me like this? Are you a woman or not?" Barbie told him coolly and emphatically, "I hate a liar. I hate an unscrupulous bugger. I hate a fox. You were ready to go as far as you did just to get what you want. Get me by a trick if you can't get me any other way. It's mating season all the time for fellers like you. Marriage my fat aunt. As for being a woman, I've got no swelled-headed ideas about myself, but I'm a better woman than you'll ever be a man." His vanity was hurt by her perspicacity. He couldn't believe he had been so transparent, and to this backwoods crumpet with innocence written all over her. He had made a mistake, he knew it, and it annoyed and humiliated him. "When I'm finished with you, you prissy bitch," he said, "you won't be able to hold your head up again. You just see you're out of here tomorrow," she said. "I want to fumigate the place before my pet snake returns. He'd kick up a fuss." "You wait till I've finished talking," he said revengefully. "Nobody'll know the difference. Make sure you cut and run when you do say it," Barbie told him. "They are all my friends here." She left him. He was out of the hut the next day, and a day later he was gone from the settlement. Barbie heard that he left half of his opal parcel with Clary Dick, who waived the rest of the debt, so he went better off than when he came. He left with 2 elderly men who had come on a fortnight's holiday to try their luck. Watching the utility truck vanishing toward the red sand hills like mounds of rouge, Barbie thought quite calmly, well, there he is on his way, and it could be that he was on his way, leaving a fool behind. I could be here with another lot of worry and hating myself while he went free and without a thought for me. Damn you, Jack, I'm all right, that's him. I'm stupid to have messed about with him at all, a silly tin-pot romance. But she felt deep resentment and a strong and lasting detestation for a callous selfishness that could deceive without compunction, considering it clever, and that could not care less what happened to the dupe. Barbie herself was ready to leave on the mail truck a week later. Strangely enough, on the same day, Resurrection Jim came riding into the little settlement on his mottled white horse. The word went around, "Hey, the Bible banger's here. Gorblimy, haven't they bloody well hanged you yet?" greeted Clary Dick. "Be quiet, you miserable streak," said Resurrection Jim, grinning. He was a blocky man with shoulders like a bear. His head was bald and brown as a nut, and his brown eyes clear and burning. His beard was black and spade-shaped. He always went barefoot, the cuffs of his drill trousers rolled up like bands around his muscular mahogany calves. His shirts were green or red. Nobody knew the real beginnings of Resurrection Jim. Some said he used to get on the booze and go home and beat up his wife. And when she died, he dedicated himself to a life of repentance. Others that he was a minister without a church, defrocked but carrying on in his own way. One thing was certain, he was a man of learning and education. His main vocation in life seemed to be the distribution of comfort and consolation by preaching or visitation, and the translation of the word into the Australian idiom. He lived frugally on any money people liked to give him. He never asked for any, but he got enough. When invited in for a meal, he always insisted on making a token payment of 6 pence. Resurrection Jim put the code of his life this way. There are 3 philosophies running in the world. Push them down, pick them up, and stay right out. I'm on the side of pick them up. He arrived only a couple of hours before Barbie was due to leave, and she didn't have much time with him, but she was glad of what she did have. She made him tea and told him all her fears and aspirations. He listened quietly, looking about the neat room, with its corrugated ceiling and its slate stone floor. One of the best got-up places there, a real cabin, in a civilization of caves and shacks and kennels to keep out the wind and rain. "When you come back again to this, Barbie," he said, in his deep, rich voice, "it won't have changed very much, but you will. You'll be different. You may not be happy. You may be miserably unhappy. There may be so much more of trial and tribulation in the changeover from the life with your father to this life on your own before you achieve satisfaction and happiness. You've got to adapt yourself. It's up to you how long it takes." "Yes, I know, but I wish I knew how long." "Listen, nobody can tell you that. Something just happens in the run of things. Time and space and eternity get together, and a man is earmarked for death or glory. A day comes, an hour strikes, a minute's up, and it's your turn for something or other. Life puts a penny in the slot and starts up the performance, and if life likes it, it goes another penny. Who knows why or how? A man takes his axe into the forest and downs one tree among thousands. Why that one? One rabbit among hundreds takes the poison bait. You can hit a cycle that can last for a day and a year, like floods and droughts and seasons. One thing, it's for the best, always for the best. Think of it that way. I know, Barbie said, I know. It always has been. When she was leaving, Resurrection Jim was talking on the hillside, the dusty, stony slope below the store. He had not bothered to set up his carbide lamps on their telescopic pillars of aluminum. A few hurricane lanterns, faces, a voice in the darkness, that was all. This son was not a no-hoper. He was just sick to death of life on his old man's farm. There was nothing to do but feed grunters. He ran away. He threw himself into life, mates, with everything he had lapping it up. But soon he got such a gutful of it he wanted to go home. His old man saw him coming. "Spare my days," he said. "Do you see what I see?" He started to blubber. "Swing the billy," he said. "Knock over a pig, and we'll put on a real do. My son is home again." Well, mates, the truck roared and drowned his voice, and Barbie was on her way to Port Augusta.